Okay, so, hi, hello, welcome back to another Creepypasta story video. Today, Creepypasta I'm going to bring is called I Died, but before I get into it, I do want to say a few things. First off, the video is one take, so if you hear me stumble, mumble, fumble, and mess out words, I'm sorry, this is one take. And secondly, I must say, please consider using code GOONS at gamersubs.gg. It's code GOONS, and you can use that to get 10% off at checkout. Also, maybe one more thing. Sorry for how I look. That's for Christmas, so yeah, I thought I would do something this year. But yeah, outside that, let's get into it. This creepypasta is called I Died. I died. It wasn't a particularly spectacular death. In fact, it was a fairly bit embarrassing. I suppose I had nothing better to do right now than to relate to you the sorry state of my corporal body before I left it. I tripped, you see, is such a trivial act, but I had been paying attention to where I was going and I fell. I used to silently laugh thinking on it. That's my first instinct was to save my phone. Reasoning is that I would heal, but my phone will break. But this occupied the use of one hand that may or may not have saved my life. My other hand hit the ground first, but bent back with a horrible crack. My head was next. And so I died. The next thing I could see, I was standing just inside a huge chasm, tapering endlessly behind me into a tiny white pinprick of light, while a large gate stood in front of me. My first thought, I remember, was that I was dreaming, because I had grown to believe that there was nothing after death. I believe I felt curiously relieved, standing at the gates of heaven, because oddly that meant I was alive. But I was wrong, and not for the last time in my afterlife. Julian, a low, dark voice had echoed within my mind. I'm afraid that you are certainly quite dead. My head was suddenly filled with memories that were not my own. Images from the eyes of a woman, then doctors and undertakers, and finally, a small scene from the perspective of the man who pushed the button that sent my body to be burned. Then I was back in my own being, shaking and alone and very, very dead. I have far too often wondered why I went to such a cliche as the pearly gates, and the most suitable of 2,711 reasons I came up with was that it was the closest thing that the deepest recesses of my belief, or lack thereof, allowed for the crossroads, and that everything after death is subjective. You are one of the tricky ones, the voice spoke. Not evil, but certainly not good, and not even a believer, but too good to go to hell for eternity. So you'll go there until you can answer the question that have plagued your species and many others countless eons. Why? It spoke this almost mechanically, and I imagine now that those lines have been spoken to an almost infinite number of souls before me. It is odd, and even now I wonder why. I have decided that the Lord God or Lucifer are both as one, or would it be both, or whoever was speaking to me gave me a question just in case, so they didn't feel guilt. If indeed they could, for sending every complicated soul, it was a convenient get out clause that allowed him, them, or whatever, to forget about us without having us clutter up heaven. But that's just my idea. I have had others telling me in one-way conversation that everyone does now, their own theories, and occasionally I have graced their ideas with a glance in their direction. One person I even looked in the eye, just to break the monotony. It helps them, I think, to know that I am still here. The next thing that happened is simple enough to describe. The cave tore away into shreds and I was falling. Cursed as I am with a near-perfect post-mortem memory, I have counted that I fell for 300 years to the second, and fell into a pool of unimaginably unoriginal lava. I knew that before I reached it, that the afterlife would be precisely like the books, and I preemptively shed my tears for it. It hurt me more that I was burning for my sins than the burning did. I guess I'm just still stubborn. I spent several years, I think, please forgive me, but time was not what was on my mind at that point. Tumbling and swimming and screaming, every breath brought fresh heat and fresh magma into my lungs, and occasionally I would hit what I assumed was the rocky walls of the cavern. And brief though they were, they did they did give me moments of false hope. The human mind can only take so long of absolute and eternal pain before it begins to work through it. For me, this could just easily have been a day as it could have been a millennium. I truly cannot tell you how long, only that it was more lungfuls that I could bear to count. After this, the souls above called the shock period. I began to think frantically about why. I tried shouting, but I could see after 3 attempts, chasing the same few bubbles of air I had recycled for however long through the seemingly infinite stream of molten rock, shouting that damning word did not help in any way. A little or a lot longer, and I began training myself to count, to think of several things at once besides pain, and eventually, I could form cohesive sentences in my head. After that, the pain became abstract. It felt like it was happening to someone else, someone like me, but who was not me? The me that I was only wanted to know why, and want to know it fast before I went mad, if I hadn't already went mad. I still cannot remember how much I managed this feat, nor what happened during my frantic philosophizing. I think I started on logical questions like, why me, and why am I here? I can say I found a use for reading on the philosophies, Descartes, Socrates, Rousseau, Solipsism, nihilism, hedonism, pantheism, and general term theism. Polytheism relate to monotheism, of course, and eventually I was reduced to realizing every possible answer to every possible why. I heard a story that a few people, each with hyper-advanced mental discipline, manage their time to stay in hell. They average at around 4,000 years. They boast that they can endure any pain and still maintain a clear mind. How I pity them. I can't remember what combination got me out, but I was still blabbering like a mad hermit when I was on the marble floor. I remember the last why I managed was, why does the rubber not fly through the glass? I gave up on that one. I gave up on that one once I noticed I was in the chasm of the gate once more. And for the first time, actually, I don't think even he knows how long I was down there. But for the first time in ages, I breathe in. I was disappointed. Well done. The hated mechanical voice congratulated. After I have reasserted my own existence, you have passed the test, and are now free to enter through the gates of heaven. I know precisely what hurt me more, that the being had decided that I, for being difficult, had given me a test, and that the test was done in such a way that I neither knew anything more than I had done before. Beside the second best way to ignore hell, to that point that I didn't even know the moment I had passed, that I had answered the most important questions in existence, and probably outside existence, with no more understanding than the infinite number of monkeys understand the intricacies of Shakespeare, and that to top it all off, God, or whoever, didn't seem to mind. He was just content just that I had put the square peg in the square hole, even if I'd done it by accident. Close contender to what annoyed me, though, was that I couldn't even bloody remember the right answer. If I could see God, I would have punched him. There was a time between 30 seconds and 500, and let's call it almost 600 million years after passing through the gate, that I thought hitting him would be a bad idea. Since then, I've decided that I'd rather the molten hell than this. When I entered heaven, I quickly realized that I was superficially unimaginative as hell. It was as superficially unimaginative as hell. You could summon, create, say, do, and become anything. You could talk to the greatest thinkers that the universe ever had, has, or will have, while eating at a recreation of the universe's best restaurant. Not that you needed to, because you never got hungry, and any flavor you wanted will materialize on your tongue for as long as you want. You never needed to learn anything or to talk to anyone because, besides being pointless, it could all be done instantaneously by wanting it. You could live your own life again. You could live someone else's life. You can even live one You can live one of your creations, or pick up where you left off. You can reprogram your personality so that you're a bit nicer or a bit clever, or a bit more persistent, or just a bit lazier. Although not many bother with that, as far as they told me, because it felt unnerving. Being able to change who you are. You could do anything except die. This was all knowledge that was flushed into my perspective of reality within the first few minutes of starting out in heaven. Sometimes an empty horizon, but a flicker of a thought, bustling with people. As I sat here, people had told me that you are never really talking to someone's soul or looking at them. You are looking or talking to an identical copy that branched off from the original at the moment he decided he didn't want to talk to anyone. Unless the person wanted to talk to you in the first place, but then he might want to follow a different branch of the conversation. And who's left with who then? And what if the copies want to talk about different topics? I have long since stopped thinking or even caring about such questions. If pressed, however, I would have to say that a God that has the simple an idea about heaven and hell, where hell is eternal lonely burning and heaven is a nice place to go. Then conversations between beings cannot be that complex. It seemed outside his stupid mental capacity, but then, I had never explored such ideas. I have just stayed here and listened. The first thing I created was a glass of apple juice. I'll say more exotic liquids for when I truly get desperate for stimulus. And alcohol even after that, if alcohol has any effect, of course. The next thing I did was ensure that I never had anything like that muscle aches my physical body had. The pain you get if you stay still for too long, and your body itches and groans to move, and gave myself the body I died with. Then I sat. You see, I had quickly realized, having thought about this for no small amount of time while alive, that an eternity of anything is an eternity of boredom. There is an unlimited number of eons with which to get tired of any single task. No matter how fun something seems, eventually it will lose a spark. And while the next thing may be incredibly interesting, for as long as you have a conscious mind, you will inevitably grow tired of it. It is a vicious, hateful cycle which I can only assume hasn't been going on long enough for anyone to feel. Others have realized, of course, but very few have given it too much of thought. Hedonism permeates throughout the multiverse existence, it seems. To combat this inevitability, I resolved to make my existence as long as possible. I plan to take a sip from the glass every billion years, but each time I reached the mark, I found that I had no wish to drink. Space had no influence here, so I was observable to everyone. Should they want to see me often, they will talk to me. Tried to engage me in a conversation, but each time they were greeted by only silence. After a few thousand years, I built up a reputation as a great listener, a feat that made me smile inside. It brightened my existence for many centuries because, as you can imagine, with everybody who ever was, gathered in one place to earn a reputation of any sort is something to be pleased about. The novelty wore off, of course, relatively quickly, but if there is one mission, one true reason to be alive, is that I can and must listen to the unending torrent of happy, thoughtful, weeping, depressing, shouting, playful, evoking, inviting, deepening, sexual, and boring talks that these people offer me. And this is my existence. My me. A statue in the gardens, the streets, the emptiness of heaven with no wish to do anything besides talk. I look at the clouds now and then, hanging solidly in the air. I'm sure they only exist because I want them to. I have often wondered if my one-way interactions with the others here are the same, but I try not to think about it, because I always find no reason not to believe that, and get depressed. Nobody, insofar as I can tell, has ever seen God. Whether that's because he doesn't want to be seen, or, as some suspect, because he doesn't exist, it's all irrelevant to me. All that matters is that I haven't, nor ever likely will, have the chance to strangle him. I heard an interesting theory that God is in fact a computer, systematically categorizing people and applying values to merit them. It makes a certain amount of sense sometimes. People keep trying to get me to move to do something, and they say that they aren't bored yet. and they don't think they ever will be. They claim that I must have lost my sanity, and maybe they're right. But I haven't ever heard of anyone else losing theirs. I think I'll stay as who I am. I'm passing my trillion year mark. 3 triplets. I find now as good as time as to put my memory to use. A woman whispered to me a few days ago. She said that someone had learned how to forget. I had never before in heaven smiled. Okay, so that's a creepypasta called I Died. I think that's a creepypasta. I don't know. It's on here. But yeah, hopefully y'all enjoyed that. It was kind of deep. Uh, but I don't know, it is what it is. So hopefully y'all enjoyed. If you enjoyed, please leave a like and consider subscribing. It is free and it helps out the channel. And use code GOONS at gamerself.gg. It's code GOONS. You can use that to get 10% off at checkout. Alright, outside that, I don't have anything else to say. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys later. Bye, everyone.